The members of the panel about different aspects of regulating Islamic banking and finance. Oliver's view is that it doesn't matter which model you adopt as long as principles of Sharia are upheld and they are observed in letter and spirit. Right. But this is a very balanced kind of view. But we would look into, we would go into details of different models. If you have any questions at this stage, please raise your hand. That would be really good to have your participation in the debate, both from the gents and ladies' side. But before you put, yeah, I can see one hand, but before, and another one as well. Before I go to the floor, I would ask this very simple question. I have been to a number of conferences on Islamic banking and finance. I can't see you properly, so I stand up. And many consulting firms, global consulting firms, okay, they have been trying to convince the industry that the future of Islamic banking and finance, especially the bright future of Islamic banking, lies within the window model. Okay. However, when we look at the actual evolution in Islamic banking and finance, we find that there is a definite move away from window model in favor of a probably fully fledged banking model or fully fledged bank model. I would like to know, because Neil, he mentioned in his opening statement that probably the best way to go is not to go for a window model, rather go for fully fledged Islamic banks. Right? And we have a number of fully fledged Islamic banks operating both in Muslim countries as well as in non-Muslim countries. Given Neil's involvement and experience and expertise in this field, I think this will be very helpful for us to know, why do you think that the Windows model is actually not probably the best way of going forward?
Thank you, and I'll perhaps, yeah, I'll develop that point. Much of my experience has been in the United Kingdom, advising banks, both conventional and some of the sponsors and shareholders of several of the new banks, the Islamic banks that were established in the United Kingdom. And I do have experience in other jurisdictions as well. But I remember when we discussed this before today, and I saw the question that Mayan wanted to ask about what it was that advisors were saying to clients about this issue. I recall advising several of the very well-known conventional banks in London in the last 6 or 7 years that they may wish to start with a window, but they should think very carefully about what would happen in the future, whether it would be 2 years' time, 5 years' time, or 10 years' time, about how the industry would evolve. Because I think that we as lawyers have an expression, although I'm not practicing law now, my new role, but justice not only has to be done, it has to be seen to be done. And it's my point about clarity, it's my point about giving people assurance. And I think the Qatari central bank, whatever their personal reasons may have been for making the pronouncement they made, when you start to think about it, when I look at the advice I've given in the past, I feel that you need to set up an Islamic banking operation, if you're a conventional bank, because that's what we're talking about here, in a way where it is capable of being legally segregated, if not today, then tomorrow, from your conventional banking organization. I do differ, I think, with Oliver on this. I think, and this is why I talk about needing to have, I agree completely about the time frame. I think you need to be looking 10, 15, 20 years ahead. You need to be, I use this expression, you need to have a roadmap. You need to map out the shape of this industry. I don't think that we've done enough work on this as an industry. I think that some of the economists, the Islamic economists that were writing 20, 25 years ago, did actually do some interesting work on different elements of Islamic banking, and they talk about different components of an overall architecture that you need. I don't think we've finished working that out yet. But my personal view is that in the longer term, I don't have a problem with conventional banks being shareholders of Islamic institutions, but I think they have to be legally separate. They probably have to have separate capital. They have to have their cash ring-fenced or what have you. And you can only really do that if you're legally separate. I'm not personally convinced that you can do it to the sort of standard that we ought to expect if you're a window. And I'm willing to, to discuss that in greater detail with people. And there are representatives of banks here who may have views on that. But that's just where I can't tell you ABC exactly why. It's a feeling. But I think it's, that's where I'm going with this.
All right. Okay. Yes.
Just to add on what has been already said in this respect. So just to add on what Nile was saying, I'm correctly pronouncing your name, Nile?
Neil.
Neil.
Yes.
Okay. You see that there are two major issues. One is the basic contradiction between with this Windows model. The contradiction is that at one point of time, we are very strongly advocating that the conventional system is something which is not based on Sharia, and this is something which is haram in Sharia. Sharia doesn't allow interest-based banking system. But at the same time, the same bank is coming up with a window, and that is offering those Islamic banking products. So the Islamic wing is saying the conventional wing is doing something which is not permissible. And this is sort of a basic contradiction. Then there are practical issues with the Windows model. What we have seen in Pakistan, that there are severe lack of ownership issues. Many of the windows, which there are 13, barring 4 or 5, the rest have opened these windows just to ensure that some of their clients might shift to the Islamic side. So they should have those products or those Islamic products available with them so that they could retain their clientele. The real ownership is not something which is believed in the utility of the system as something which is viable, which is expandable on commercial basis, on profitable basis, but something just to ensure that our client may miss. And then there are restrictions. On the Islamic windows, the restriction is that they cannot touch the client of the conventional side. For example, I'm a client of the conventional side, and the window would be having those instructions. Look, you cannot touch Mr. Salim because Mr. Salim is already our client, the client of the bank. So there are certain practical issues, the ownership issues. And often we have seen the management and the staff attached with the Islamic side. They're having sort of a discriminatory treatment with respect to the financial benefits, the recognition, and all those things. So there are practical issues. Although it would be better, it would look very good that we could have cost-effective outreach expansion, and we can leverage the branch network. But still, one is the contradiction, and two, there are real practical issues at the Windows level.
Yeah, cannibalization, actually, this is something, the fear of cannibalization by the conventional management. This is a huge issue. Yeah. And I was actually coming to you, Kamal, because you have worked for HSBC Amana, which was an Islamic window model. Then you served as head of Islamic finance at Saudi Hollandi Bank. What are these concerns, which were highlighted by Mr. Salimullah Khan? What was your experience when you worked at HSBC and Saudi Hollandi?
Yeah, I think these are, to start with, these are very valid concerns which have been observed by central bank. I think I would rather look at how to address them rather than put few from my side that these are additional ones. It's very simple human instinct or human nature. If I have something in my control, why should I let him take away from me? So when you look at from the bank stakeholding perspective, conventional business, Islamic business, they will fight for that. They will say, oh, no, yes. This guy he doesn't ask for Islamic, so don't offer him Islamic. Yeah. But these are smaller issues. I think the bigger issue which we should look at, and there should be policy level guidelines on that from the central bank, and also from the bank senior management, bank shareholders, bank board of directors. And that is that if you want to offer Islamic banking, number one, it has to be offered with very clear mandate. And mandate is based on what is the view of the management and the guidelines of central bank. It cannot be just only to retain the customer who otherwise will walk away. Because that will create issues with your brand recognition, with your brand equity, then offering, then cost effectiveness will be a big issue there. Why would banks spend more money by having two parallel banking models and providing for systems and everything for that? It doesn't make sense. So my view is that these issues are very genuine issues, and the best way to resolve them is to start gradually. I think my colleagues who are saying that window model does not work, the one criticism on that is that if you do not go on that gradual approach, starting with window and then growing, you face very difficult problems, number one, in providing the services because you don't have the knowledge base, you don't have the product base, and number two, the cost. You cannot simply, let's take the example of Bank Muscat. If Bank Muscat Board of Directors decide today that from tomorrow we will be all Islamic, can they do it? Simply they can't do it because there is a lot of work need to be done to reach to that level. So my humble view is based on the experience I've learned through gradually moving from this model, that you start with window model, but with very clear mandate and guidance to everyone. Because the problem is, if you don't have that clarity, then you will see that window model will fail and will not provide the service customers are asking for, and you will have more cost and more operational and other hazard. So when you have a clear model, like we have seen in Saudi Arabia, I will give you the example of Saudi Hollandi Bank. When we started Islamic banking, we had one product. Then gradually we moved to two. Now in the retail banking, we have all products as Islamic banking products. Now, does it make sense to continue the conventional banking products when all of our retail banking or personal banking products are Islamic? It does not make sense. It's not economically viable. So if you do not have a senior management clear policy guide on that, the people who are working on conventional, they will still try to keep it because they fear that, oh, maybe I will lose my job, or maybe it's going to be kind of end of day for me. Now, what we as a bank have decided that we don't have to convert one branch and two branch and then third branch and then have maybe all the branches Islamic. We now have all the products offered through the bank as Islamic. So effectively, we take off the conventional products. The customers anyway, they are not buying them. They are not using them. So we will just offer Islamic products, and that will indirectly mean that all of our personal banking business is Islamic. Now, you need to have that gradual move, and you need to have very clear policy guideline on that to achieve it. If you don't do that, you fail on the way. And if you just start with the Islamic model, then you have cost issues, and then you have the delivery issues as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Oliver, I would come to you, but there are some other very interesting questions. Qadir, I would, subsidiary model, which is probably very popular in the UAE. A conventional bank having an Islamic finance company and trying to do their business through that company. For example, Mashriq Bank started Badr al-Islami, which was a subsidiary, and somehow it didn't work, right? So they decided to go back to the window model. Now they have, instead of Badr al-Islami, they have Mashriq al-Islami. And I'm sure other banks, they have had similar kind of problems as well. What is your observation on this one? Is subsidiary model as practiced in UAE a successful one? If it's not successful, what are the reasons behind it?
Okay, in the UAE we have both the window model and the subsidiary model, as you correctly pointed out. Historically, the subsidiary model may not have been as successful as the window model because of actually all the reasons that have been touched upon. And the biggest reason is cost, that Kamal was outlining. If you're Mashriq and you have to set up a subsidiary, not only do you have to capitalize your subsidiary, but you have to come up with a whole new operational infrastructure network for your subsidiary. You have to hire new employees who work just for your subsidiary. You have to have complete backroom operations for your subsidiary. You have to have front room operations for your subsidiary. And that's a huge, huge, significant capital expenditure. So I mean, everybody in this room, including ourselves, we're consumers. And as consumers, we want the most cost-effective and the most cost-efficient product. And if you, I mean, even if you go back to, say, the position in the UAE 10, 15 years ago, when there only used to be Dubai Islamic Bank and Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, and there's maybe 2 or 3 people in the market, the costs of the Islamic products were very expensive. And people used to complain that by doing something Islamic, you were actually being penalized. And when the market changed, i.e. the central bank allowed conventional banks to open up subsidiaries or open up windows, depending on what their strategy was, the cost of Islamic financing came down and it became cheaper for the consumer.
Right.